Welcome to episode 3 of Wise Up, a podcast by the Wise County Messenger. Today's episode is sponsored by Parker Properties, where we're now joined by a two-time Division II college All-American, a man who averaged 31 points per game his senior year at Decatur High School, a back-to-back Lone Star Conference Player of the Year.
He's a beast on the court. He now leads from the sidelines. A Lubbock and Wise County legend.
Your very first head coach of Lubbock-Cooper Liberty High School, Parker Hicks.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me.
Cool. So you're starting a program from scratch here. What's it like? Trying to build something completely from the ground up, and how's the program looking so far?
Yeah, it's a really neat deal. There's hundreds of basketball coaches across the state that never get to see the stuff that I'm getting to see, and to be here is really special. Designing the first uniforms, to designing the scores table that goes on the court, to designing the chairs that the benches, like just everything being put together has been really cool. The past couple weeks, the bleacher company's been in our gym putting in the bleachers, and so just seeing that, and we've had a coach. I think he's coached 38 years. He said, I've never seen a set of bleachers get put into a gym. And so just seeing all that stuff at this young age and this opportunity is just really special. And then the program will get going. We get to officially start practice October 25th. So we'll see. We only have freshmen and sophomores this year. So, we're expecting, to be a little bumped and bruises along the way, but hopefully, we could potentially have the same varsity team for 3 years in a row. So hopefully we just keep growing as we go. So.
Yeah, will y'all be playing like a full varsity schedule or
Yeah. So our football is just playing JV. I guess they think football more physical sport. It's a contact sport. We're just playing JV. But basketball will be the first boys varsity sport competition, I guess, that the school sees. So there's a little bit of pressure because football, even though they are playing a JV schedule, they're undefeated. Our volleyball team is number 1 in district. They're really good. And so now eyes are starting to turn towards boys and girls basketball and kind of keep going what's been started here. But like I said earlier, we know it's going to be tough, and it's hard playing with 14 and 15-year-olds against 17 and 18-year-olds. So I know if I was in high school playing some freshmen and sophomores, I'd love it. So I'm sure some teams are feeling the same way.
well, what I think is stands out to me about you and kind of your current position now is that transition from athlete to coach. I mean, in the past, kind of at the higher levels, you've seen some guys, really excel and some guys struggle. What do you think is kind of the common factor for like the Steve Kerrs, the Phil Jacksons, the Juwan Howards that have gone from being a great player to being a great coach?
I think it's just kind of, being there in the moment. As a former athlete, you understand how hard it is on the body. You understand how hard it is to balance your schoolwork and athletics. I played for a really tough high school coach, Drew Kaufman, who's done great things. But, he's kind of the way that I coach now, and the way I was a good player is because he, like me, he played in college and he knew what it takes. And if looking back at it now, which I always was grateful for Coach Kaufman and everything he did, but I really hope these kids are kind of grateful that I'm here just so because they know that, hey, he's been to college, he knows what it takes. And that's kind of the trust and stuff that I think comes with being an athlete is those guys know that you've played college ball and seen the next level. So I think that's probably the biggest factor I have into it is I've been there and I understand what all these boys are and guys are going through. So,
And I guess what point in your life, or kind of how early on, did you think or realize that coaching was a career possibility for you?
people used to think I was crazy, but even like, all these kids have dreams of going to play in the NBA or, going playing overseas and making a lot of money doing what they love. But I've never really been about playing professional basketball. For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a coach. My dad was a coach and he's probably been my biggest influence. Not probably, he is my biggest influence in life. And just growing up and seeing him coach, I've known from a very, very early age that I wanted to be a teacher and coach. And everybody kept telling me, like, don't do it. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. But, here I am. And, I was very lucky last year. My first year out of college, I get a head job, at a 4A school. And that doesn't happen to a lot of people. So I've been very fortunate with my opportunities. But it started at an early age. I turned down 3 or 4 G League contracts to be a head coach. And, part of that was me getting married and all that stuff. But at the same time, I knew where my heart was. And, I was satisfied and complete with my college career, that I was ready to move on to the coaching world. So that's what we did, and I haven't regretted it since.
So there were some more opportunities to keep playing.
Yeah, there was some G League, and I got a call from the Cavs, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, and the Hawks, I think was the fourth one. So it wasn't really contract offers. It was more like, hey, come, try out for our G League team, basically. So there's no guarantees. And really the reason I didn't do that was because the tryouts weren't until, this time of the year, October, September. And at that point, it's too late if you want to coach because, you're already to the year. So I just made the decision to go ahead and jump the ball and get into coaching. And, I've missed playing a little bit, but still being young, I get to go play open gym with my guys and, still get to go up and down a little bit. So
still in shape. So you still could be.
I don't know
Never
about
know.
great,
Can we
but
count it
they're
out?
good enough to go up and down the court. Not the prime shape days, not the Coach Kaufman in shape days, but they're in decent shape.
Well, we've got a basketball goal in our parking lot, so you should come hoop sometime.
I need
Beaver needs some
I'll
run.
be there next weekend. I'm coming down.
Oh no.
No, never mind. I rescind that offer. Never mind.
I'll come knock
Actually
on
just
the
come
door.
destroy us. Well, when I think about you and your family, obviously come from like a really athletic family between your brother Wilson, who's pitching in college right now. Is that just kind of part of like was competing just something that was kind of part of kind of your DNA from an early age? And I guess what was it like kind of growing up in a household with brothers that were also good athletes too?
Yeah, I really think, obviously parents can't control that, but my parents having three boys, we were always competing. No matter really what it was, we were always, we have a pool at the house and we'd race swimming laps, or, we'd run and see how fast who could run the fastest mile, who could wrestle and last the longest without tapping out, just the typical boy stuff you see in the household. And, that started at a real young age, especially for me and Wilson, just because we're closer in age. And then Wilson kind of got to share that with my little brother, Larison, who graduated in 2021 from Decatur. So it's really been we've been doing it forever. There were some times when we were younger when me and Wilson got to play together on some teams. And then obviously when he got to high school, we got to play together for 2 years. And just those are, experiences that we beefed a lot back in the day. Like I think most typical brothers, like there was, we didn't go a week without fighting or doing something like that. But now, that you've kind of seen that relationship turn into like a really awesome relationship where we can talk about anything and not really get mad. But, if we were to play some one-on-one or, all that stuff, I'd beat him in basketball and he'd beat me in baseball. And so we've kind of accepted that and we realize who's each other's sports is. And so, we've kind of just learned to love each other along the way, even though we really didn't, act like it growing up. That bond right now is really special. So.
Yeah, but going back, you said that there was obviously some good competition between you and Wilson, and like you said, some beef there a little bit. So I want to know, what's the all-time one-on-one record between you and your brother?
It's a lot me, zero him. We'll just put it that way.
Never let him win.
Now he can strike me out 10 times in a row, and I won't say anything there. But basketball, I think I could beat him.
Gotcha.
8. I'll give him 2 times out of 10. I'll let him beat me.
Okay.
Just to keep his confidence up.
Well, I think looking at a coaching tree is such a cool thing to kind of trace the influences back. And for you, Coach Kaufman, Coach Beard, Todd Duncan at LCU, who maybe people don't know as well, but has built an awesome kind of perennial contender.
Yeah.
On each of those teams, you found success and went on these deep runs. Were there things that you picked up from high school and college during those runs that you kind of will look to in your role now? Like, oh, they pressed this button at this time and this seemed to really work. Or is there anything like from those runs that you want to try to implement?
Oh yeah, I think I've obviously gotten a little from each guy. Each guy was different. Coach Kaufman was probably not. He's the hardest coach I've ever played for, just his intensity and stuff. And so, what I've learned from him and taken from him is, like you said, when can I push buttons of athletes? When can I, rip an athlete and get onto them, but they still know at the same time, hey, my coach, like he loves me, he cares about me, like it doesn't turn into a turmoil. And then I kind of use that as it goes into Chris Beard and Coach Beard is he was very player oriented. And what that means, basically, he just whatever his players wanted, he'd make sure it'd get done, and I want to treat that for my kids. And that kind of they go hand in hand, because if I don't have a good relationship with the kid, then I'm not going to be able to go rip them or, get onto them and stuff like that, just because they're going to shut down and quit. And so I use that from Kaufman, and then the relationship from Beard that he built. His relationship with his players from top to bottom was just, unbelievable. He's such a great guy that, I could text, "Hey, coach, I need a sideline out of bounds play. Can you help me up?" And he'd send me, and he'd still help me today. And then it finally goes over into, Todd Duncan, my last coach I played for, and just the way he kind of, like you said, built things at LCU. When I got to LCU, they were still a good program. But when we got there, me, two other transfers got there, it kind of turned it around, the culture. And, we were back-to-back conference champions. My last year there, we were ranked number 1 in the country for several weeks of the year. And so what I learned from him is just kind of building that culture and, not establishing a new one, but kind of making changes and adding to based on what you have. And so I've kind of used him as to where I'm at now. I got to create a whole new culture. All my kids are different than what I had last year, and style of play is different and all that stuff. And so that's kind of what I've learned from him. And then now we're just going to kind of absorb those 3 big things into, one, hopefully, big snakehead that, people try to take down. But I was just really lucky to play for 3 really, really good coaches. Top 3 obviously have respect, I think, in their respective divisions. Drew Kaufman, obviously, but he's on the girls' side now, but he's highly respected around the state. Chris Beard, did things at Tech and got Texas back to where they were. And now he's at Ole Miss, and I know they'll be a top 10 team here before long. And then obviously Coach Duncan creating a powerhouse of a D2. And so just seeing all 3 of those guys at their different levels and being the top of their level really is encouraging to me, that I can kind of have those guys to fall back on and learn from.
Speaking of top-level performance, we wanted to give a quick shout-out to today's episode sponsor, Parker Properties Real Estate. Over the last 18 years, Parker Properties founder Randy W. Parker has grown his business from just a handful of employees to now over 50 that serve 6 counties, including Wise, Montague, Parker, Jack, Wichita, and Tarrant. So, if you're searching for your dream home, wanting to sell your house for top dollar, or looking to move to North Central Texas, visit parkerpropertiestexas.com or call 940-627-9040. Again, that's 940-627-9040. They'll never let your call go unanswered.
And I kind of want to take it back to, you just graduated high school, you're averaging like 30 points a game, and then you decide to walk on at Tech. I guess what was that? I don't know if there was like a tryout process or anything like that, but like what's that first day that you were on the court with those guys, with the Jarrett Culvers of the world? Will you kind of walk me through that first time on the court, and kind of how did you take on that challenge?
Yeah, so back in, I think it was April or May of my senior year, I actually got connected because Coach Kaufman's brother was a graduate assistant at Tech at the time. And so I guess they had talked and whatever, and I actually had a visit to Tech. And, when I went and played pickup with the guys. Well, the day I played pickup, I had a really, really good day. And so after that, they offered me a PWO walk-on. And basically a preferred walk-on was I didn't have to go through any tryouts with any of the other walk-ons deal. It was like, we're recruiting you as part of the team, but you're just not getting scholarship, pretty much what it was. And so I guess I take that as my tryout. And so just walking in, back then, my freshman year, guys like Keenan Evans and Justin Gray and Zach Smith, who can jump out of the gym, are just standing right there in front of me. I'm just like, holy cow, I got to go against these guys. And the reason I chose that is because I guess I personally felt like I was the better player than what I was recruited as, if that makes a whole lot of sense. I didn't play the whole AAU ball like everybody did. I wanted to play with Decatur. I want to play with, guys like Bryce Elder, Drew Redwine, those type of guys. I want to spend my summers with them and not go spend it with some random kids. And so that kind of hurt me getting recruited, because that's the deal now. You got to play AAU or, you're toast. And so just getting that opportunity, it was too hard to turn down, and I grew up, my mom went to Tech, and so I've always kind of been a Tech guy. And so just getting that opportunity, like I said, I wanted to go and kind of prove some people wrong and show that I can make it at that level and stuff. And which I feel like I did, even though I didn't play, I was still, did stuff. And, I was, part of the scout team, and I really enjoyed that role, getting to help the team that way. And, I traveled, I got the whole 10 yards. And so just that experience was unbelievable. And then I think that's really the reason why I was such a good player at LCU. If I would have gone to LCU right out of high school, I don't think I would have been near the player that I was. But, being around the Jarrett Culvers, the Zaire Smith, the Justin Gray, the Keenan Evans every day, you learn to compete, and you really question yourself on the basketball court sometimes, because it's just such a beat down with those guys. But really, they made me to the player I was, and then I was able to take that to LSU and, really have a successful college career. So.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, after a couple years at Tech, you go to LCU and you really have some breakout seasons there, which we'll get into your I think maybe one of your career defining games here in a minute. But yeah, how happy are you, even though you transferred to LCU? How pleased are you with yourself that you still took on that challenge? Like you mentioned, it prepared you a little bit for LCU.
Yeah, sorry to stumble, but it really just kind of made my college career. And who knows, I could be wrong. I could have stayed at Tech and fought for 5-10 minutes a game and, said, hey, I played at Tech my entire career. But I was just so competitive and so, hungry. And like I said earlier in that little podcast, is I knew I wasn't going to go play pro basketball. So I didn't want to waste 4 or 5 years of my college career just, playing 5-10 minutes a game. So that kind of led to the decision of leaving, because I want to get as much of my playing time as I can before it's all time to hang it up. And so like that developed me into the player I was. And then even when I got to LSU, I wasn't playing right away. I was struggling. And, I remember calling my dad, telling him like, hey, I don't know if I want to keep playing. I just kind of want to, quit and go. And then, I had one, like a 20-point game at LCU, and then I start the next game, and then I started every game I played in after that. And so it was just a turn like that. But even the transition period, it was a time where I didn't feel like playing basketball anymore. I just kind of was okay, thinking I wasn't ever going to be good enough. But, it just took that one time and some really encouraging words from my dad to keep going. And, it obviously paid off, and Dad knew what he was talking about. So.
Yeah, I remember. I think I spoke with you a couple of years ago, and you mentioned your dad for this game that I was going to talk about, this 50-point game, where I think you set the school record, scored the first 34 points for your team to start. And I think at the time you said like you saw your dad like coming to that game that night. But yeah, I think it's so interesting to see a player test themselves at the D1 level, and then maybe kind of try to carve out their role, but then go to a new program, and then you're like the guy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
all the you're kind of the focal point of the team, I guess. So kind of just what was that? You kind of mentioned, I guess, kind of had a breakthrough, but what
Yeah.
was it like to make that transition, I guess?
Yeah. Like it was an easy jump. Like I said, I was questioning even playing. And then, for some reason, I didn't want to leave Lubbock, for whatever reason. So when Coach Duncan offered me the scholarship, it was something I couldn't turn down. And then I just took the work ethic I had at Tech and then took it to LCU, and obviously was had a really good career, being 2-time conference player of the year and 2-time All-American. And then everything just outside of basketball kind of fell in place too. I met my wife there where she played basketball. She was a stud. I got a closer relationship with my faith and God because I went there. And so everything kind of fell into place outside of basketball. And so that's really the biggest thing I got from LCU was, basketball was great and all this stuff. Well, my life really kind of changed and started coming to not, I started seeing me growing up and all that good stuff when I went there, and obviously did what I had to do to play and compete. But just the whole transferring process really kind of changed the way kind of my viewpoint on not only life, but just kind of life outside of basketball. I guess that was the first time I had life outside of basketball, just because I didn't think basketball at that point was, my whole life I thought basketball was it. Like this is all I'm going to do. This is my life. But then when I get there, I realize there's stuff outside of basketball that can, really make me happy and really be where I want. So that was part of the transition period. And then everything else, I was just lucky to have the career I did.
What's it like to walk onto the court or any game and just feel like you can't miss?
Yeah, so it's funny because it kind of just felt, and I may have mentioned this a couple years back with you, it felt like a normal game. The game wasn't even supposed to happen. It was the year after COVID. We had traveled, well, so the way it works, you play two teams on the road. And so our first team we were supposed to play canceled because of COVID. And so we traveled down to play the second team on a Friday night because they played Angelo State on International played Angelo State on a Thursday. So all right, great. We're getting to play our first game of the year on Saturday. Well, after International plays Angelo, they cancel because one of their guys popped positive for COVID. And so we drive all the way to San Antonio, have to turn around and come back and not even play against International. And so we were kind of bummed about that. And then we played 2 games a week. So we played Thursday, Saturday. And then that Saturday before we played International, we lost our first game of the year. We had been the number 1 team in the conference pretty much the entire year. We lost our first game of the year. We had 3 guys not play because they got in trouble and they were suspended. And then so that following Tuesday, we made up the International game. So we had 3 games that week. And I was just kind of aggravated after the loss and feeling like I should be able to do more. And, it felt like a normal game going into it. And then, I'm there in the warm-ups or whatever, and I see my dad walk in by himself when it's a Tuesday night, and he teaches at, Alvord High School now. And so I know the sacrifice he made. And just seeing that kind of lightened me up. And then, as soon as I saw 2 or 3, 4 go in, it was like, holy cow. I look up there and, I have 34 points and International has 35. I'm like, what in the world is happening? Like, even I was in like of a shock because like, I just, I haven't seen that anywhere, just not even, just in the game in general. And, I don't know what happened that night and why it was the way it was, but I think part of it was seeing my dad walk in knowing, he had drove 4 hours, left school early. He was driving 4 hours home that night. He was going to wake up the next morning and go teach, and just seeing, and, no offense to my mom, but it was just my dad. It was just kind of a me and my dad moment. And so him being there and seeing that, I was really kind of relieved. And I believe that's probably the reason why I had the game I did. But, it it was weird just because it was kind of like I was in shock, just I think like kind of everybody else was. And, I remember in the timeout, one of my best buds on the team is Cameron Copley, and he's now turned himself into a great, high school coach. I'm like, do I just keep going? Like, what do I need to do? And it was just kind of because I felt bad because I'm like, I'm scoring all these points and nobody else has scored. And, I look up and I'm 11 for 12 and I've only missed 1 shot. He's like, no, screw that. Keep going. And then right after that timeout, he goes and scores a layup. So it made me feel better about it because I didn't like all the attention it was getting. I've never really been about that. I was just kind of, here to win the game. And, my dad said, I wouldn't have cared 50 points if you'd have lost. So I'm just glad you won the game because he would never talk about it again. So that's really kind of where my mindset's been is, yeah, it was great and stuff, but I was just glad we, ended up winning. But it was kind of crazy.
Did you know that I looked back at the stat categories from that game, and I think you had like maybe 6 or 7 career highs in different categories like field goal attempts, field goal made, and free throw attempts, 3-pointers. Did you know when you were kind of, making those career marks, did you know they were happening in real time? Or was it until after the game you were like, man, I just had a career game here?
Yeah, it really wasn't until halftime. It was, I had that great first half, and then I get into halftime, and my coach is just like Coach Duncan just yelling at everybody else, and he's like, Parker, I'm not talking to you. Everybody else is 1 for 11. You're over here 12 for 13, and he's just kind of yelling at them. And I'm like, I was like, is it really that? And then sure enough, you get going in the second half, and then even like some guys on the bench are like, hey, you're getting close to the record. Hey, you're getting close. Hey, you're getting close. And so I think really it got to a point where I wasn't really the only goal I was trying to get. It got to a point where I was just trying to get the school record. You have, 44 with 10 minutes left and school record's 48. That was kind of just the goal as it got to. But I just said, basically, screw that. Like, let's just win the game. And however many I end up with is what I end up with. And, it was it turned out. I'm just glad we won the game, or my dad would not be talking about it ever again. So
Well, I guess I know you got mostly younger guys on your team now, but do you ever let them know? Do they know about your college career and stuff? And do you ever have to like kind of show them like, hey, I can still play a little bit?
last year, last year I would a little bit because I was fresh out and I wanted to, but this year, kind of this school being in Lubbock and stuff, this summer I had the opportunity to play for the Air Raiders, and basically is what it is. It's a group of former Tech players playing together in a tournament called the TBT. It's like the basketball tournament, and
Yeah.
it's 64 teams, and the winner takes home $1,000,000. And so I got the opportunity to play in that. And being from Lubbock and these kids being younger, like we went, obviously played in the game or whatever, and and even then I use it as an opportunity to kind of like not only, I guess, mainly to prove to myself and my family and stuff like, hey, I can play with these Tech guys, even though I didn't play 2 years there. Like I've changed to a player, I can play with these guys, and so getting to share the court with Davide Moretti and Matt Mooney again this summer was just unbelievable. And I think my athletes seeing me with those type of guys, they're like, holy cow, okay, coach can play. And that's where it kind of goes back to the relationship. Like when I jump a kid, like, hey, he knows because he's been there. He played with Matt Mooney, or he messed this up with Davide Moretti. He knows like what's going on. And so now I don't think they kind of know not to mess with me, which I was on the other end of that when I was in high school. Me and Coach Kaufman used to play all the time, and I'm I can't believe I'm admitting it, but I never beat him one-on-one. He was undefeated against me, and even like it just the way. And so now I kind of use that so I can go undefeated against my kids, and I have some bragging rights. And today's Coach Kaufman's birthday, and I texted him, hey, let's play one-on-one. Let's see if I can beat you, just because I never beat him or whatnot. And so I've kind of used that to my kids, just because they'll start talking, and I'm like, okay, well, if you want me to for real play, then I'll for real play, and then it'll happen, and we don't talk about it afterwards. But they know and they respect that, and I think that's why hopefully we can build a successful program over here, is because those guys know I've been there and done it, and they trust kind of all my work I've put into it and the outcomes I've had really at all three levels of my playing career.
What makes Coach Kaufman a difficult one-on-one opponent? I'm sure he's got some tricks up his sleeve.
He is, oh yeah. He back then, and I don't know if he plays anymore. He might play. I need to figure it out, but he couldn't miss. That's just the one thing, and that's what I kind of realized going into the next level. Like, it wasn't that he was blowing by me and getting wide open shots or any of that stuff. It's like, hey, he's creating enough space to where I'm still contesting the shot, but he's still making it. I'm like, what else can I do? Like, I felt like it's just that moment. And that just kind of shows the difference of levels it takes to play at that. Is, a good player is going to make tough shots even when you have good defense. He pulls out his step back, and I feel like my hand's in his face and it just goes in. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so it's just that, he's really good at getting it. He used to be. I don't know if he still is. He's 39 years old now. He's really good at creating his own shot and, obviously making it. And he's really one of the best shooters I've ever been around. So,
Parker, thank you so much for joining us today. Good luck this season, and just appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, man, we're rooting for you back here at home. I think everyone's really enjoyed your success as a player and now as a coach, and we can't wait to see how you're going to lead this brand new program into a successful future. So, yeah, man, thanks again, and like you said, good luck this season.
yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Wise Up, a podcast by the Wise County Messenger.